If you only had 6 months to live, what would you do? Buy an island, drive a supercar, or hand your black card to the janitor cleaning the toilet? Sounds ridiculous? Well, it is ridiculous. But Nathaniel West, CEO of biotech empire West Biotech, just did exactly that. 11:57 p.m., 72nd floor West Biotech Tower. The CEO's glass-clad office shimmered in silence, broken only by the ticking of a clock and the faint hiss of the air conditioner. Nathaniel West, the most powerful man in the building, sat motionless. City lights reflected off his sharp features, but they couldn't hide the emptiness in his eyes. Callister syndrome terminal stage. His private doctor's cold diagnosis echoed in his mind like a death sentence. 6 months, maybe less. In his hand was a thick medical report and a whiskey glass with melted ice. But not a drop of alcohol could quiet the growing terror, breaking through the cold, hardened shell he had built over 2 decades. He pulled a black card from his wallet. Black Centurion, the most powerful card in the world. No limit, no rejection, accepted everywhere. Once a symbol of elite power, now nothing more than a meaningless piece of plastic for a dying man. Clack, the sound of a door opening. "Oh, sorry, I thought no one was here." A gentle yet assertive female voice. A young black woman stepped into the room, pushing a cleaning cart. Tahlia Moore, 20 years old, a herbal medicine student working night shifts at West Biotech to save for tuition. A girl with hair like clouds and a smile bright enough to set fire to the sleepy HR department downstairs. Nathaniel frowned. "I asked not to be disturbed." Tahlia didn't flinch. She beamed. "I thought you'd left. I was going to quickly wipe the sink. It's making a rattling noise like someone having a heart attack." Nathaniel blinked. Did she just joke about a heart condition in front of a dying man? And for the first time in his dark, miserable week, a smile flickered on the CEO's face. "Here, use this." "What?" Tahlia raised an eyebrow as Nathaniel suddenly stepped forward and handed her the gleaming black card. "I have 6 months to live, maybe less. I just gave you one of the most valuable things I own." "Why?" she asked, cautious but not afraid. Nathaniel looked her in the eye. "Because I need to feel joy, real joy. And I think, if anyone deserves this, it's the person who just laughed in the face of fate in a bathroom." Silence. Tahlia blinked, then smiled like noon sunlight. "All right, but I'm not buying Gucci bags. I'll get a bunch of plants. And tea. The kind that eases pain, you know?" A few seconds later, she walked away with the black card in her lab coat pocket, and Nathaniel stood there, heart tangled. Somehow, where she had touched his hand, there was something warm, strange, and comforting. If you only had 6 months to live, what would you do? Buy an island, drive a supercar, or hand your black card to the janitor cleaning the toilet. 12:23 a.m., still on the 72nd floor. After Tahlia left, Nathaniel returned to his desk. But instead of continuing to stare at his test results, he found himself looking at his own hand. The place where the cleaning girl had placed her hand on his shoulder felt strange. It didn't hurt. It wasn't cold. On the contrary, it was warm, very warm, as if a quiet stream had reversed its course from the surface of his skin deep into his bones. He shook his head. Probably the alcohol. But 20 minutes later, when he unconsciously placed his hand on his lower abdomen, the spot that had been aching for weeks and folding him over in pain, the pain was gone. No more sharp stabs, no more pressure. Just an odd silence, right in the middle of his death spiral. The next morning, in the executive boardroom. "Nathaniel, are you okay?" whispered the CFO when he saw him arrive early, coffee in hand, looking unusually refreshed. "Fine, better than usual," he replied shortly. The truth was, he felt extraordinarily alert, not tired, and for once not sleepless. He had just slept 6 hours straight for the first time since being diagnosed as terminal. And the only thing different about last night was his encounter with the black girl, whose smile burned brighter than any boardroom fluorescent light. 3 nights later, they crossed paths again. Tahlia was making tea in the employee break room, her apron speckled with dirt from the small potted plants she'd brought in to help the office breathe a little easier. Nathaniel passed by, meaning only to say thank you, but stopped when he saw her gently rubbing a handful of silver-colored leaves. "What's that?" he asked, surprised by his own curiosity. Tahlia turned around, eyes bright. "Silver peppermint calms the nerves, light sedation, especially for CEOs who frown too much at stock charts." Nathaniel chuckled. For the second time in his life, a girl had made him laugh in a place where he thought there was only room for despair. "You should try it," she said. "All right." And when her hand touched his again, he was certain this time. Something electric passed beneath his skin. Not pain, something light, like healing. 1 week later, his private doctor frowned. "Something strange is happening. Your new tests show a 40% drop in inflammation. White blood cells are back near normal levels. That's not possible in late-stage Callister syndrome." Nathaniel remained silent. He already knew. He felt it every night after drinking Tahlia's tea. Every time she touched his hand, his shoulder, his chest, the pain would vanish. There was no scientific logic. It wasn't in any textbook, but it was real. Then something unbelievable happened. One night, Nathaniel collapsed with an intense abdominal spasm. The worst yet, he nearly hit the floor in his office. Tahlia appeared just in time. She didn't call for help. She didn't panic. She simply placed her hand on his chest and closed her eyes. She didn't say a word. She didn't pray. She simply waited. 5 minutes later, Nathaniel could breathe again. The color returned to his face. He opened his eyes, weakly asking, "What are you? An angel in a janitor's uniform?" Tahlia looked at him and smiled. "I'm just a student of herbal medicine, but my grandfather always said some people are born with hands that carry light." That night, Nathaniel lay awake. He picked up his notebook and, for the first time, wrote what no CEO ever had the courage to say. "I, Nathaniel West, do not understand why I'm getting better, but I know one thing with certainty. She, Tahlia Moore, is not just a janitor. She is the only thing keeping me from being afraid to die." It began with an unfamiliar stillness. A solitary CEO slowly beginning to question the one thing he believed was keeping him alive, a cleaning girl and his own heart. Lately, the penthouse high above Manhattan where Nathaniel West lived had started to smell different. It no longer reeked of aged bourbon, glossy walnut furniture, or expensive French cologne. Now the apartment seemed to breathe a new scent: warm mint, sliced ginger, lavender sun-dried on windowsills. That smell came with a person, Tahlia Moore, a black girl with bouncy curls, eyes like early summer sunlight, and a smile that could jolt an immune system back to life. She still wore the simple uniform of a cleaning staff, but she brought with her hot herbal tea, curious leaves, and a gentle presence that couldn't be measured in dollars. Nathaniel didn't know what was happening. He, a cold-blooded CEO who had lived his entire life in the world of contracts, shares, and lawyers, now found himself waiting past midnight just to see a girl who mopped the floors smile at him. But suspicion is the survival instinct of the rich. He began to fear. Fear that what was making his heart race every night wasn't the tea, but her heart. Fear that what she brought wasn't hope, but the softest trap in the world. And fear that as his body healed, he was free-falling into a place called trusting someone outside his class. So he investigated. It took 3 days. The report sat neatly in a black folder on his desk. Tahlia Moore, age 23, student of traditional medicine, partial scholarship. Mother died because treatment was unaffordable. Works 3 jobs to pay tuition and support her youngest brother. GPA 3.9. Owes no one, connected to no one, and notably turned down a prestigious full-ride scholarship simply because "I want to stand on my own 2 feet." Nathaniel read it all and sat frozen as if he had stumbled upon the first page of a magical novel while he had spent his entire life reading financial reports. That evening, rain tapped softly against the windows. He messaged her, asking her to come upstairs with the excuse, "Urgent smell issue. Seems like the air in here is too real." Tahlia arrived, hair slightly damp, her worn-out Converse shoes decorated with faded angel prints. Something dead in here? Or is it just your soul? She asked while wiping down a table with a grin. Nathaniel stared at her for a long time. Aren't you curious? He asked. Why I let a stranger like you get this close? I was, she said, nodding, but I couldn't figure it out, so I let it go. Silence. Then he said softly, I looked into your life. Tahlia froze. Her eyes darkened like a door slamming shut. She didn't argue, didn't get angry. She just placed the rag on the table. I guess in your world, not many people come close without asking for something. She looked directly into his eyes. But you were wrong. Nathaniel said nothing. She sat down across from him and gently removed her rubber gloves. Do you know how I felt when you handed me that black card? She asked. I felt tested, like it was a morality quiz. Poor girl meets money. What will she do? That night, when Nathaniel woke up, the room was empty. On the table was a small folded note written in purple ink. I didn't take your money, not because of pride, but because I came to heal, not to be rescued. If you truly need me, call, not for a janitor. Call for Tahlia. 3 days later, the pain returned. The old pain, the illness, and the ache of someone retreating from his heart. No doctors arrived. No assistant understood. Only Nathaniel, sitting in his office, clutching his stomach, his heart in disarray, typed one short message. I need you. Not the tea, not the medicine. You. Midnight. A soft ding echoed from the private elevator on the 79th floor. The door opened. Tahlia stood there, holding a large old fabric bag, her Converse shoes still wet from the rain, eyes fixed on Nathaniel, who was slumped by the glass wall, arms around his stomach. You don't look much better than that dusty Japanese screen in the hallway, she smiled. At least that thing isn't shaking like a leaf. Nathaniel couldn't manage a smile. She stepped forward, knelt down, and opened her bag. The scent of herbs flooded the space like magic. Fresh ginger, peppermint, licorice, and something that smelled like crushed moonlight. Don't say a word, she said as she gently placed her hand on his chest. The pain eased instantly at the touch of her palm against his expensive dress shirt. It was as if his body had finally found a frequency it could breathe with. After a while, they sat side by side on the polished wooden floor. Why did you come back? Nathaniel asked softly. Tahlia didn't answer right away. She pulled out a small, worn leather notebook and handed it to him. Inside were carefully handwritten words in slanted ink. The ones who carry the deepest wounds often hide them behind the calmest smiles. But they too, if healed, will become lighthouses for others lost in pain. My mother wrote that, she said, while she was being treated, before she passed. Nathaniel was speechless. I didn't want to leave, she continued, but I had to be sure of one thing, that you were calling me because of who I am, not because it's convenient. Silence. Behind them, the city lights flickered like a heartbeat just revived. Then Nathaniel turned to her, his gaze so sincere it was almost frightening. I'm a CEO. I've built $1 billion company. I've stood on global stages to talk about leadership models, but for the first time, I don't know how to make someone stay. Tahlia turned to him. I'm not something to be kept, she said. I'm someone to be chosen, every day. Nathaniel nodded. Then, tell me your conditions. Tahlia leaned back and looked up at the high, wide ceiling. All right, she said, her eyes sparkling like the reflection of the universe. If you want me to stay, you have to stop hiding behind your title. No more CEO West, just Nathaniel. You have to let me bring my little brother here for a few days. He needs to see that not all rich people are cruel, and not all janitors are lesser. You have to try real herbal tea, no sugar. You might puke, but you have to finish it. And finally, she looked at him seriously. If I help you live longer, you have to promise not to use that time to sell more shares. You have to live it for real. Nathaniel smiled faintly. Not the CEO smile, but a human one. Do you have a contract? He joked. No, she said, standing up and offering him her hand. We don't sign papers. We sign with tea, sweat, and trust. From that night, the penthouse began to change. On the wine shelf sat a pot of ginseng. In the bathroom was a jar of homemade balm. Next to the $3,000 laptop was a tin box of ginger cookies labeled Tahlia's Specials. And inside Nathaniel's heart, for the first time, there was a feeling he couldn't name, but it didn't hurt. If you ever thought a CEO's penthouse was only for wine, cigars, and boardroom calls, then you've never seen one taken over by a superhero-obsessed kid and a girl who carries a whole world inside a canvas tote bag. Friday night, the 79th floor penthouse of Nathaniel West, once as quiet as a tech monastery, was now filled with unfamiliar sounds. Children's music playing softly from a phone, the clatter of Legos spilling onto the floor. Tahlia's voice yelling from the kitchen, "Malik, stop tapping on the 79-floor glass, unless you want a bird to smack you in the face." Nathaniel, dressed in expensive pajamas, sat quietly, smiling. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone in his own home. Malik Moore, 9 years old, hair curled tight like cotton candy, eyes shining as if anything were possible. He didn't know who Nathaniel was at first, just thought of him as the tired-looking white guy who probably just got out of the hospital. "Do you play games?" was his first question. No title, no questions about wealth. "Never have." "Then I'll teach you, but you have to choose between two things, Spider-Man or Iron Man. Pick wrong and I'm gonna laugh." And so it began. Meanwhile, Tahlia was unlocking what she called the most useless kitchen in the city. "You've got a fridge full of wine and alkaline water. You planning to live forever off pH 9.5? And she joked. He laughed too. Before long, the kitchen was filled with the scent of ginger soup, oatmeal porridge, cinnamon toast, things Nathaniel had never eaten, but now considered salvation each morning. 3 people, 3 worlds, 1 roof. At first it was awkward. Nathaniel wasn't used to people singing while wiping down counters. Wasn't used to someone opening his cupboards, refilling thermoses with herbal tea like they were back at their mom's house. Wasn't used to laughter echoing while he was in the middle of a strategic call with Singapore. But strangely, he liked it. One evening, Malik asked, "Do you have kids, Uncle Nate?" Nathaniel shook his head. "Then have you ever had dinner with someone every day?" He fell silent. "I never thought that was important." Malik nodded. "That's funny. I thought grown-ups knew all the important stuff." That night, Nathaniel lay awake. The sound of their laughter and voices lingered somewhere in the apartment. His once iceberg-like home was melting. Not because of a heater, but because of 2 souls lighting a fire inside it. Tahlia scribbled a note in her bedside journal. Day 5 since moving in. Malik calls Nate Uncle White. Nate calls Malik Little Monster. I call the 2 of them temporary family. But why does my heart feel like it's forever? By the 3rd week since Tahlia and Malik moved into the penthouse, everything seemed to find a new rhythm. Nathaniel ate ginger porridge every morning, listened to soul music instead of CNBC. Malik taught him how to eat a proper street-style hot dog with mustard, in a bun, and without all that fancy wrapping. Tahlia sang Beyoncé while mopping the floor, her voice strong like a high-capacity portable battery. Nathaniel started thinking about the future, something he had buried alongside the diagnosis of late-stage pancreatic cancer. But then it returned, the pain, without warning, without mercy. One afternoon, while Malik was watching cartoons and Tahlia was sun-drying lemon slices for tea, Nathaniel suddenly collapsed, clutching his stomach, cold sweat soaking his shirt. He didn't want to call Tahlia. He didn't want to shatter the peaceful world they had built. But the crash of a falling glass betrayed him. Tahlia came running like a storm. "Oh my God, Nathaniel!" She held him up, feeling his body tremble uncontrollably. His cheeks were cold. Don't call an ambulance," he whispered. "What's wrong with you?" "You think I'm stupid," she snapped, gripping his hand. "This isn't the first time, is it?" Nathaniel turned his face away. His silence was the heaviest confession of all. Hours later in the bedroom, Tahlia tucked a blanket around him. His face had lost all color under the soft yellow lamp. She sat at the edge of the bed, still holding his hand. She had read his medical files secretly while he slept. Cancer, metastatic, terminal. "How long did they give you?" 3 months, Nathaniel whispered, eyes open but hollow. "Probably 2 now." The room felt vacuumed of air. Tahlia jumped up. So you were planning to spend the last 2 months of your life like this? Hiding your pain, avoiding love, then dying alone wrapped in silk sheets and cold marble floors? Nathaniel chuckled weakly. Not alone. I have you. And Malik. His voice cracked. But I don't want you to get hurt because of a man who's already fading. Tahlia sat back down. Her eyes were sharp like blades and warm like coal fire. You didn't give me a choice. You pulled me into your life, gave me hope, and now you're planning to retreat? Nathaniel looked at her. This tiny black girl, overflowing with energy, fierce like a funk track that never slows down. I don't need a prince. I need someone real, even if it's just for a few weeks. As long as you're willing to live every day fully with me. Then she held his face eye to eye. You have the right to refuse surgery, but you don't have the right to refuse my love. That night, Nathaniel didn't sleep, not because of pain, but because for the first time, he wanted to live more than anything. He knew this couldn't just be coincidence. Tahlia wasn't just a girl who wandered into a CEO's penthouse. She was something science couldn't measure, a cure, not in a prescription, not for sale in stores, but real when a heart dares to believe. There's no such thing as a late-stage cancer patient suddenly getting better, unless you introduce science to someone named Tahlia Moore. 1 week after the severe pain attack, Nathaniel West was not only still alive, he had begun walking every morning again, unaided. He finished a full bowl of Malik's ginger porridge for the first time without vomiting, and he smiled. People often say that faith is good medicine, but what he had wasn't just faith, it was Tahlia. Doctor. Louisa Grant, Nathaniel's personal physician, sat frozen in front of his latest test results. 3 months ago, his liver enzyme levels were so high, he should have been in a coma. Today, normal, unprecedented. Could the lab have made a mistake? No. Equipment malfunction? We ran it 3 times. Louisa clutched her head. The results suggest he's recovering. Nathaniel smiled as he leaned back in his chair. Maybe you should write, self-healed by loving the right person in my file. Louisa raised an eyebrow. This isn't a joke, Nate. Your body is responding as if there's an unknown antibody at work. Nathaniel glanced out the window where Tahlia was playing hide-and-seek with Malik under the sun. That's exactly it. Something unknown. Not in any lab, but in a girl named Tahlia Moore. Louisa grew curious. What is she giving you? Hibiscus tea, her mother's recipe, with ginger, honey, and some strange leaf that smells like licorice. Do you have a sample? Nathaniel pulled out a glass bottle filled with the reddish-purple liquid, its gentle aroma drifting up. Louisa took it, muttering, We're venturing into territory, beyond medical science. That night in a private research lab across the city, Louisa Grant placed a few drops of the tea under a microscope. She had never done this with a beverage before. The results chilled her. White blood cells responded as if they were being instructed on how to self-repair. She adjusted the lens and whispered, What the hell are you, Tahlia Moore? The next day, Nathaniel got a call. Louisa's voice was urgent. Nate, I need to meet her. As soon as possible. We might be on the brink of a global medical breakthrough. Tahlia laughed when she heard the request. So the doctor's basically saying, Excuse me, ma'am, it seems you're holding the cure for cancer mind-sharing a bit? Nathaniel held her hand, unable to hide his concern. This could save millions, but I don't want them to turn you into some lab experiment. Tahlia smiled, her gaze deep as a night. Sky, I'm not afraid of being studied. I'm only afraid they won't believe in the most important part, which is that love is also a form of immunity. A week later, the research team from Shaw Innovations arrived. Nathaniel's blood, Tahlia's tea, and Tahlia herself became the focus of their studies. But the more they tested, the more questions appeared. No miracle compound, no rare herb. Only one thing every machine confirmed. Whenever Tahlia touched Nathaniel, his cells glowed under infrared light, as if his body was being recharged with a single touch. If all it takes is a touch to cure cancer, then I'm just gonna hire her to be my girlfriend. Faster that way, said the late-night talk show host 5 minutes before everything turned deadly serious. Tahlia Moore had never imagined herself on national television. But here she was, seated in the center of a blinding studio under bright lights, next to a man who had nearly died, Nathaniel West, the CEO who came back from the brink. The cameras zoomed in close. A black woman with a gentle smile, tightly tied curls, expressive eyes, and the small hands that once mopped floors now being called by millions, the girl who heals by touch. The media called her a miracle. Hashtags exploded. The Tahlia effect, touch to cure, cleaner who heals. Edited clips showed Nathaniel collapsing in pain, then recovering thanks to a cup of tea, a hand, a touch, a look that silently said, "I see your pain. I'm here." The post-hospital press conference turned into an international event. Reporters, doctors, investors, even spiritual leaders demanded answers. Who is she? What exactly did she do? Is this faith in human form? But people aren't always kind to what they can't explain. "Do you think you're some kind of prophet?" one reporter asked, voice sharp as glass. "Do you have a medical license? Or is this just an elaborate PR stunt from a dying corporation?" Tahlia sat there, her shoulders trembling slightly, but her eyes clear and steady. She answered in a soft but unwavering voice, "I'm a senior psychology student. I used to make tea in the freezing cold to pay for college. And I love a man who was dying, enough to touch him like it was the last moment I'd be alive." Silence. A room full of people, and not a breath was heard. But the price of miracles is always suspicion. Online, half the world called her an angel. The other half called her a manipulative fraud. Some begged her to touch their loved ones. Others threatened lawsuits for impersonating a medical professional. Bloggers questioned, is she using hypnosis to control him? A viral YouTube video bore the title, "Did a janitor heal a dying CEO? Or is this a dying billionaire's master plan?" Tahlia began avoiding the streets. Even when holding Nathaniel's hand, she felt the stares of strangers like needles piercing her palms. Touching him no longer felt magical. It felt like an obligation. One night after a live TV appearance, she sat alone in a dressing room. The harsh fluorescent lights dulled the rich brown of her skin. The host's voice echoed in her mind. If she's the cure, what happens if she leaves? Will the CEO die again? It sounded like a joke, but to her it was the most heartbreaking question she had ever heard. Am I a lover or a remedy, a human being, or a biological function? Nathaniel knew. He always knew. That night he placed a sheet of paper on the table, his resignation letter. Quiet. No announcement. "Tahlia," he said, "if this hurts you, I'll walk away. I don't need to be a CEO. I just need to be the man who stands behind you." Tahlia's eyes shimmered with tears as she looked at the letter. Then she laughed, a sound full of sadness and love. "If you leave this all behind for me, that's not love. That's running away." She took his hand. Her smile returned, soft as the first breath after a panic attack. "I don't want to be a miracle worker. I want to be the woman you can fall apart in front of without anyone needing to know." And from that day, they started over. Not through magic, through education, through a movement. Human connection is medicine. No one was allowed to touch her. No one was allowed to call her a witch. Only this remained, a college girl who brewed tea from her grandma's recipe, a CEO who survived because someone hugged him at the right time, and a love story brave enough to step out of fairy tales and into real life. Tahlia answered a reporter with a sentence that made the entire room rise to its feet in applause. "I didn't heal him. The love between us healed us both." That afternoon, in the sunlight-filled penthouse on the 71st floor, Nathaniel sat quietly by the window. No more financial reports, no more calls from the board. In front of him was only a new set of medical test results, and something no one could understand. His biological indicators continued to improve, not because of medication, but seemingly because of Tahlia's presence. "Impossible," his private doctor repeated during a meeting with the research team. "She doesn't inject anything, no IVs, no interference with treatment. But whenever she's there, the pain eases, cells regenerate, blood pressure stabilizes, the immune system stops attacking itself." One of the researchers murmured as if afraid of hearing his own thought. "She might be a biological antidote?" In a lab across the eastern side of the city, the research team began tracing her background. Tahlia Moore, second-year student in biomedical studies at River Point Community College, Jamaican Ghanaian descent, raised by a single mother, worked 3 jobs at once, including night janitorial work at the West Corp headquarters. No money, no family connections, but always smiling and cracking jokes that made the whole elevator laugh. However, her medical records revealed something unusual. Rare blood structure, presence of an unclassified protein, and most notably serotonin and oxytocin levels, hormones responsible for calm and bonding, were 6 times higher than normal. Scientists referred to this as emotional bioresonance, and the first person to clearly feel it was Nathaniel West. The destined night in the research room. "Do you know that when you sleep, your heartbeat syncs with mine?" Tahlia said softly as she sat reading beside Nathaniel's hospital bed. As always, Nathaniel smiled weakly. "If you're my heartbeat, then maybe that's why I'm still alive." Tahlia laughed, still gently holding his hand like a reflex. Suddenly, the monitor beside the bed flashed green. The heart rate stabilized. Oxygen levels peaked. A nurse gasped at the screen. "Oh my God, he's recovering!" Stronger than even after the last treatment. The 3 a.m. phone call. A leading immunologist from Columbia University called Nathaniel in the middle of the night. "We need to test her blood, not just to save you, but potentially millions." Nathaniel stayed silent, then spoke quietly. "If she agrees, I won't stop her. But she's not a test subject. She's the woman I love." Tahlia's choice. Tahlia stood in front of the mirror, looking at herself in a simple work uniform. She was ordinary. She had never dreamed of becoming the focus of any experiment, but she had also never imagined she could save someone just by being near them. "I'll say yes," she told Nathaniel, his eyes wide in disbelief. "I don't need them to turn me into a medicine. I just want them to understand some things can't be analyzed through test tubes. Maybe love is the only cure that medicine can't teach." In the days that followed, Tahlia joined a voluntary biological observation program. Her blood was studied. She continued her classes, her jobs, her jokes, and her tea-making for Nathaniel. And the strangest thing was this. Every time she entered a patient room, just a touch, just a smile, certain biological indicators would stabilize. No one could explain it. No doctor had a formula. Tahlia Moore, once a janitor, became the living symbol of human-to-human healing. The media rushed to cover the story. The first headline read, "The girl who healed a CEO with a touch and a smile that speaks." Financial News stated, "West Corp's most valuable asset isn't in its lab, but in the heart of a human being." Medical journals remained cautious. She might be a biomedical breakthrough or simply a miracle. But Nathaniel only said one thing. "She didn't cure my disease. She made me stop fearing life and stop fearing death." 3 months later, on the balcony of a repurposed old building in the west side of the city, Nathaniel West, once the face of biomedical technology, was watering plants. No suit, no laptop, no cell phone. He wore a plain knit sweater, his hair a bit long, his hands dusty from soil. Inside, Tahlia Moore was teaching a group of small children how to make happiness tea from herbs. Lily, the neighbor's daughter, burst into laughter as Tahlia showed her how to smell first, sip later to enjoy the aroma. At the entrance, a hand-carved wooden sign read, "The Healing House," where what we need isn't always medicine, but a hand to hold when we're weak. Just 2 weeks after officially being declared cancer-free, Nathaniel shook Wall Street by resigning as CEO of West Corp, liquidating all his shares, and announcing the creation of a new foundation, the Moore West Foundation, dedicated to connecting modern medicine with emotional healing. When asked why he would walk away from the empire he had built over more than 20 years, Nathaniel simply smiled. "I once built a company to save lives, but along the way I forgot how to be present with people." Tahlia reminded me, we don't need to be doctors to heal others. Not long after the healing center was established, they held a small wedding. No media, no broadcasts, no celebrities. Just a few old friends, janitors from the former West Corp building, med students, neighborhood kids, and a jazz band playing on upcycled bottles and buckets. Tahlia wore a simple white dress. Nathaniel approached not with a black card, but with a silver ring crafted from a metal wire taken from the broken tea machine where they first met. "I give you everything I thought I never had a whole heart," said Nathaniel in his vows. "And I accept it, not because of who you are, but because you chose to be truly yourself," Tahlia replied, holding back tears. A few years later, the Healing House had opened branches in 5 countries. Each location blended clinical medicine with spaces of connection where patients were embraced, listened to, and treated as human beings, not just as cases. A viral post once read, "I was a terminal cancer patient. They didn't cure me, but they gave me a reason to fight, and somehow, my body found its own way to live." Tahlia never claimed to be someone with a special gift. She simply said, "We can't save the whole world, but we can ease one person's pain a little at a time." Nathaniel simply added, "She's not a doctor, but she is my antidote, and maybe the world's." Sometimes miracles don't come from test tubes. They come from a little black girl with a radiant smile and a cup of tea in the middle of the night.